You're listening to the Atlanta Dream Center Church podcast. If you'd like to support this ministry, you can give at www.dreamcenterchurch.com, where every dollar helps advance the kingdom of God. We hope that this message edifies and encourages you to do the great things God has called you to do.
Come grab a seat, grab a seat. Oh, that feels better, right? I knew that front row was cursed. Look at you guys. They all sat right behind you. You guys put your stuff on the seats and you left. Yeah, it's cursed. All right, we're going to get right into this thing now that I've taken all your time. We're in a series. How many of you guys enjoyed Pastor Clarence last week? Anyone of you guys enjoyed that? It was awesome. Yeah, what a great guy. I was out celebrating my parents' 50th anniversary. It was so good that they didn't even come back to church. That's how good it was. No, they're actually at another church speaking right now. And as I was having you guys come up to the front, someone told me to tell you guys something. I'm so bummed about this. I made a vlog for our church because I thought, man, how do I keep people updated? We made a video, and the very beginning of the video, the very first thing that happened, we came into our church, and the toilets were backing up. And it was disgusting. I want you guys to know that. I'm sanitizing my shoes right now, actually. My shoes are sitting sanitizer. And all day that day, we had 3 floods that day, didn't we? 3 floods in that bathroom. Weird stuff was going on that day. So we called up someone to come fix it, and they came through, and they said it's going to cost $10,000 to fix our problem. Yeah, we said, okay. And so we said, well, let's just do a quick fix because we could get a cheaper price. And so we had someone come in yesterday and did a quick fix. They did a quick fix. And how many of you guys know a quick fix don't mean nothing? And that's what exactly happened. So I just need you guys to know something. The bathrooms are flooded again, all right? Yeah, so it's disgusting. The men's restroom is disgusting. Don't go in there, okay? We're cleaning it up. Women's restroom is not so bad. And listen, you have to tinkle. Just don't flush, okay? I'm not going to judge you. Just don't flush. All right, well, that was a lot of talking, y'all. We went from worship to just listen to me talk. Hey, we've been in a series, guys, called Focus. This is what our graphic looks like right here. Focus, realigning our focus on what matters. And I took 2 weeks off of this little journey that we're taking you guys on. And today, I wanted to get back on track with you guys because I think what we're going to talk about today is actually important, not in just your relationship with the Lord, but with your relationship with other people. How many guys have good relationships? Anyone here got some good relationships? How many guys got some bad relationships? Anyone here got some bad relationships? Yeah. Someone's pointing at his wife. That's terrible. Yeah. Hey, listen, this is actually crucial to your relationships. And I'm going to say this as a married man, 10 years. My wife's not here. And someone told me, I don't know, is Naya in here? No. Someone told me that listen, I always feel bad talking about how much I love my wife. Because everyone kind of groans and like, ugh, you know. But someone on Saturday night told me, Tom, when you talk about your wife, I'm gonna get hyped for you. I love my wife. Can I just say that to y'all? I love her. Yeah. But I'm gonna tell you right now, what we're gonna be talking about today is a lesson that I learned while being married. And it was tough. In today's lesson, what we're gonna be talking about focusing in, and we're gonna be talking about focusing on listening to understand. Everyone say understand. Listen, there's been a million times I've listened to people to hear what I want to hear. Have you guys ever done that before? I mean, I've done that on everything in my life. There's been so many arguments that I'm arguing with my wife, and the reality of it is, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, you're arguing with someone, but in the end, you are saying the same thing. Has anyone ever had those circumstances before? And in the very end, you realize, wait a minute, why are we even arguing right now? I don't get it. And usually, I'm going to say usually, 95% of the time, it's because with me and my wife, I am the one who is listening not to understand, but I am listening to fight her. I listen to everything she's saying so I could pick it apart. I interrupt her so I could pull out that little point that she's talking about so I could really, nail it in. I could seriously give you guys probably every argument that me and my wife ever had, but because she's not in here, she went to the nursery, I feel bad talking about fights without her here. Because when I talk about how mean she is, I want her to face you guys, all right? That's what I want to happen. This is recorded. She's actually probably listening to it right now. Susie, I love you. But listening to understand, I've found myself many times with friends where I'm just listening because I feel bad. How many of you guys have ever listened to someone and you didn't really want to be listening to them? Anyone have that before? How many of you guys have listened to someone for so long that you forgot you were listening to them? Anyone ever done that before? Yeah, I've done that too. If you're not raising your hand, you're the person they're listening to. I can almost guarantee it. But listen, I want to talk about this because we do that with God. we do that with God a lot. And I want to just kind of narrow in. We're going to talk about one story, and we're going to read it in the book of 1 Kings. If you have your Bible, if you have notes, we're going to get into 1 Kings chapter 9 today. But we're going to talk about realigning how we listen. We're going to talk about what it takes to listen with understanding. And we're going to talk about with relationships, but we're also going to mainly talk about this with God. How many of you guys have ever prayed and asked God for an answer? Anyone in here before? How many of you guys could testify that you heard God's answer and you didn't like it? How many of you guys heard God's answer and kept praying for a different answer? Anyone ever done that before? Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about what we need to do as a people and just the best thing that's possible. And how many of you guys know that God plans for you to have a life full of joy, peace, gentleness, kindness, self-control, love, and goodness? You guys know that, right? That's the fruits of the Spirit. That's not a prosperity gospel. That's the gospel saying this is what God actually has for you. That even if you have nothing, you can walk with joy. Did you know that? That's a good Jesus, isn't it? That's a good gospel. But before I get into that, I want to tell you a quick story about me trying to listen to God for what I wanted to hear. I was 18 years old, and I didn't know. I don't know what stories I tell you guys because I forget. There's this thing. Okay, you guys want to hear a dumb joke? I saw it on TikTok. Okay, that was pretty good. The doctor said I got ADHD. I don't know what HD is, but I got 80 of those suckers. You guys ever hear that joke? Yeah. That's a good joke. I liked it. That's a good joke. Thank you. And I got 99 problems, but ADHD ain't them. All right. Dumb. I'm sorry. I was just going to move on. Thank you. Hey, check this out. No, I wanted to be in ministry. Actually, go back further. I wanted to be an NBA star. I gave that up, though, at age 17. I said, I'm not going to go. It's not like I had probably a real chance to go into the NBA, but how many of you guys know you dream big? Anyone in here dream big? I was dreaming big. And I thought, man, if I could make it to the NBA, I'll be a Christian who's in the NBA. I'll give God all the glory. And the Lord told me one day, he said, Tom, either you're going to follow me or you're going to follow your ideas. Which one's it going to be? So I said, God, I'm going to follow you. I gave up basketball at 17 years old. And I'm going to be real with you. I thought I was good, and my friends and my family said I was good, but the reality of it was, I don't know if I would have ever made it to the NBA. I think God was just saving me some embarrassment, to tell you the truth. And so go forward, and I'm 18 years old, and the Lord calls me to be a pastor, not just a normal pastor, a youth pastor at the Atlanta Dream Center Church, where you guys are sitting right now. And I'm going to be real with you. I was 18 years old, and my parents were the pastors here, and there was nothing inside of me that wanted to go work with my parents. I love my mom and dad. You guys know I love my parents. I brag about them every chance I get. I love my parents. But I didn't want to come and serve under my parents. I wanted to go and move out of their house, which I did at age 18. And I wanted to go have my own job, which I went and got. And I wanted to do my own thing and have my own adventure and really establish my identity. Did anyone go through that at 18 years old? Man, how many of you guys got teenagers who might be going through that right now? That's a real thing. And so I remember telling the Lord, I don't want to be a youth pastor. I want to get out. I want to move out on my own. And can I just tell you, when I moved out on my own, it was the worst decision I could have made. Have you guys ever seen my parents' house? I'm an idiot, dude. I should have stayed there. I should have moved in, married there, had all my kids there. It's a nice house. I moved out, and I was so hungry. I was so bad at managing money. I would steal Pringles from my brother. I was living with my brother, Jeremy. He always tells me to this day, Tom, why didn't you just tell me you're hungry? You could have had my food. I would steal 2 Pringles so he wouldn't know, and I would eat them in my room because I was so hungry. That's a true story. That's how miserable it was living on my own. But I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm going to not be a youth pastor. I know that's what you want me to do, but I'm going to go into ministry. I'll give up all my ideas of a secular world and doing work in the secular world because that's what I want to do. I said, I'm going to go to a place called Youth with a Mission, YWAM. Me and my buddy Sean Legg said, man, this will be so much fun. Back then, I was from California, born and raised in California, up in the mountains. But when I moved out to Georgia, and everyone heard me say bro and dude all the time, they'd always ask, are you a surfer? And I would lie and say, oh yeah, I surf all the time. I didn't know how to surf with a lick. And so what happened is, I think I went surfing one time at 16 years old, and it was a great trip. I loved it, but I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm about as good at surfing as I am at building houses. I don't actually know what I'm doing. I can put some nails on a board, but that's about it. And so I went and told Sean, I said, Sean, that would be so cool. Why don't we go to YWAM in New Zealand? It would be awesome. And YWAM is you go 3 months of discipleship, and then you go 3 months out in the field. And when I say out in the field, you go out and do mission work. And the mission work, guys, get this, was not in some starving desert. It was in the Fiji Islands. That's where we're going to do our mission work. Doesn't that sound amazing? Could you imagine 3 months of working in the Fiji Islands? It would be the best thing in the world. And we decided we'll train, we'll surf, and we'll do all this stuff, and we'll go out and do the ministry. So after high school, I told everyone in high school, I said, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go into ministry. I prayed about it, and I know that's what I should do. I should go to ministry. Now, I want to go back. The Lord had already spoken to me and said, Tom, you're going to be a youth pastor at the Land of Dream Center Church. And I said, I don't want to do that. And so this is what I did. I started praying, God, will you provide me the funds that I could go and be a missionary in New Zealand? Can I tell you what happened? My circumstances were amazing. All of a sudden, I started getting so much money, and everybody, all my family and friends were so kind. They started handing me money left and right. When I graduated, I remember being so excited. I got about $1,000 handed to me. This is for your trip to New Zealand. I remember I had a Tuesday night Bible study with Sean and some other guys. We're reading the book of Corinthians. How many guys want to get into more Bible studies? Anyone in here? Hey, I do too. Hey, who's enjoying the women's Bible study though? I heard that thing's lit. Okay. Andy, you going? Yeah, now you will. Now that I've called you out, you'll be there. It's Tuesday. We were in a Bible study. We were reading 1 Corinthians. And every time I'd go in there, we'd share testimonies and we'd share prayer requests. And I'd share the same testimony. Guys, I feel like God's doing everything for me. I get all the money. Everything is lining up. I'm going to New Zealand. My passport is active. Everything is good. My visas are looking great. And guys, every Tuesday for about 5 months, I was testifying that I knew that God wanted me to go to New Zealand because everything was lining up. I had favor. My finances were coming in. I was having blessings. There were miracles. But in the back of my head, I knew what the Lord was saying. He kept saying, you're going to be a youth pastor at Land of Dream Center Church. I just kept saying, nope, I'm going to be a missionary for you instead. Well, come November, actually around this time, the year I was supposed to leave, I was going to leave at the end of December, and we had about 4 weeks before we were leaving. And it was about this time in that year, 2007, 2006. Gee, Moise. Hey, isn't it crazy? 2000 babies are 21 years old now. I know. Does anyone else have it stuck in your head that 20 years ago was the 80s? That's in my head. Like 20 years ago was the 80s. That's weird to me. That's 40 years ago. Anyways, there was one day I was sitting with the Lord, and I was praying. I was crying out to the Lord, saying, God, I love you. I was in a worship service, singing these songs like we're doing today. God, I love you. Thank you so much for who you are. And the Lord stopped me and said, Tom, are you going to do what I called you to do? Or are you going to follow after what you want to do? First was my ideas, but now it's my wants. And that day, which was just 2 weeks earlier, someone had called me up and said, I'm going to pull a lot of strings for you, Tommy. I'm going to have I got a lot of connections to airlines. I'm going to get you a free ticket to New Zealand, but you can't back out of it. My name's on the line for this. And I said, I'm not backing out. I guarantee I'm going. The Lord's done too much for me. I've seen him work. I heard his voice. And so sure enough, they went and bought me that ticket. And after the Lord had spoken that to me, I was humbled. I said, God, I want to be a Christian, not someone who does Christian works. And so that day, I cried my eyes out because I didn't have the courage to call up that man who told me that he was going to give me that ticket. I called my friend Sean. I said, Sean, I don't think I should go. I'm going to have to back out. Sean was pretty hurt that day. Him and I relationship was actually pretty injured from that, pretty hurt. Then I called up the guy who bought me the ticket. He didn't answer his phone. I left him a very cowardly little voicemail. Hey, this is Tom. I'm not going to be able to make it on that trip. Bye. Hung up. I never got to talk to that guy again. And after that day, I remember from there on out, I was convinced about something. And I've preached on this before, and I'm going to preach a little bit on it today. But the main thing I remember learning in that story, in that moment in my life, was that circumstances are not God's voice. All the circumstances were great. I had finances coming in. I had miracles coming in. People were buying my plane tickets. People were excited. But the circumstances were not the voice of God. But I wanted them to be because I was listening for him to tell me what I wanted to hear. And so what I did is I twisted every little thing I could to hear his voice the way I wanted to hear it. Oh, someone bought me a plane ticket. God, that must be you telling me I could go. Look at all this money I was donated to me. Oh, God, that must be true. You want me to go. I have no problems. There's been no hardships to go to New Zealand. This must be your voice telling me I could go. And that whole story, I learned that I was trying to listen to God so I could hear what I want to hear. And I know that I'm not alone. If you've been a Christian more than a few years, you know that you've prayed to God to get an answer from him. And you've tried to get him to say a certain thing. But even when he says something different, you don't want to listen. Why? Because you're not listening to understand. You're listening for your own sake. And there's this guy, Elijah. I'm going to read this story in 1 Kings chapter 9. He's a great example of someone who listened to God to understand. Elijah is just in this great miracle in this story. Just a few chapters earlier, it's a crazy story. I wish I brought some props out. I don't have any props, so I'm going to use your piano. All right, Evelyn, is that cool with you? It's on. They had this altar, and he made a deal with all the priests. He said, hey, listen, your God's fake. Your God is fake, and my God's real. And why don't we have a little competition? He said, I want you to bring your sacrifice down. I want you to lay it down on the altar. And when you lay it down on the altar, why don't we see whose God will come down and set fire to the altar? So all these priests came out, and they were so pumped, man. They bring out their sacrifice. They lay it out on the altar, and they start dancing around that altar. They start cutting themselves. They're wailing and screaming to their idols, saying, oh, come, bring the fire down on this altar right now. And it says this in the scriptures that Elijah was making fun of them the whole time. I don't know if you guys know this, but when you read about Christians in the Bible, they're a lot more wild than we are. Right? They are. Well, how many of you guys have felt like you're pretty timid as a Christian? Elijah was kind of a jerk, to be honest with you. He kept saying, well, where's your God at? He must be taking a nap. Maybe you should get a little louder. Your God must be busy right now. He must not know what's going on down here. Maybe you need to be a little louder. And so as day went and the day broke, they stopped, and their false God never sent fire down to the altar. So Elijah says, listen, I want you to bring my sacrifice up to the altar, and brings up to the altar. And then he says, this is how I want to prove to you that our God is so real, the God of Israel, your God, me and your God, so real. He said, I want you to get a bunch of buckets of water. I want you to drench this thing with water. So they took a bunch of water, and they started dipping it on there and pouring it in there and pouring it in there. And they filled the trenches up with water on the altar. And he goes to the side, and he prays to the Lord, says, oh, Lord, let it be. And guess what happens? It says fire from heaven comes flaming down, right? Boom, and all of a sudden the thing lights on fire, and it's this crazy, awesome moment. Could you imagine being there for a second? Wouldn't that be awesome? How many guys, let's be honest, how many guys would think it was a trick, a magic trick? Anyone here think it was a magic trick? You want to believe it was God? Bro, I know I would. Don't even try me like that. I've been like, how did he do that? But Elijah did it, and Jesus did it. And this is what Elijah does. He actually takes all those priests and prophets of those false gods, and he has them murdered. He has them killed. Execution for following after false god in the nation. Well, Elijah ends up running away because he got fearful. God did all this miraculous work, and then he got freaked out. He took off running because the queen Jezebel said, I want that man dead. So she sent her armies after him. How many of you guys have ever seen God do something great, but then circumstances change and you get real scared? Anyone in this place? I've done that. I've seen God do miracle after miracle. How many of you guys have seen God do a miracle? Anyone in here? How many of you guys know there's nothing impossible for God? You guys know that? But I want to say this about Elijah. Elijah is one of the great prophets in the Bible. He saw God do wonderful things, but sometimes circumstances could get the best of you. And that's exactly what happened. Circumstances got the best of Elijah. Elijah takes off running. He goes and hides. In fact, in chapter 9, we read this. He's been running for a long time. And it says, but he, Elijah, went a day's journey into the wilderness. And he came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. This is Elijah. How many of you guys have ever been in such a bad position you just wish you would die? Anyone in here? Okay, I'm going to ask something kind of weird. I don't want to take up time telling you guys jokes all the time. But have you guys ever just like wished you would die over like the most minimum thing in the world? Like, for instance, and this is what I mean by this. I'm not a bad case. I don't need any help. Oh, I need help, but just not in this area. But sometimes I'll be like late to a meeting, and I'm just like, gosh, I could just fall right now in front of this car, and it'd just be over. You guys ever thought that kind of stuff before? Okay, I'm not alone. Good. Okay, I don't know. You know, it's never when I'm really stressed out. It's always when it's like this really small thing. I'm thinking like, I could just jump in front of that bus, and I don't have to worry about this anymore. Anyways, he's over here praying, God, I wish I would just die. I hate running. And this is what it says. It's enough now. Lord, take my life, for I'm no better than my fathers. Then as he lay and slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. Then Elijah looked, and there by Elijah's head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. I just want to point this out. The only reason I brought this up is because Elijah is really down in the gutters. His circumstances got him all messed up. He wants some hope. He wants things to change. And he's laying down and he's going, God, I just want to die right now. We've all admitted we've been in that position before. I just want to die. I can't take this anymore. My kids are bugging me. My job ain't working out. My dreams are so far away. Why am I even trying? But I actually want to point out really quick what God's answer was to him. He said, why don't you eat something, why don't you drink something and take a nap? How many of you guys know there's a lot of power in eating and taking a nap, amen? Some of you guys are having bad circumstances, you just need to go to bed. Can you guys hear me on that for a second? And I know this sounds really dumb, but it is true. Some of y'all over here complaining to God, and God's just, why don't you eat something and go to sleep for a little bit? And when we wake up, why don't we talk? Husbands, do not say that to your wives. It might be true, but don't you say that to your wives. That will get a divorce paper thrown at you. So Elijah's depressed. He goes to sleep and he wakes back up. I'm going to skip a few verses. Then God said to Elijah after he woke up, go out, stand on the mountain before the Lord. And it says this, and behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks into pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. Now after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. So it was when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and he went out and he stood in the entrance of the cave where he was staying. And suddenly a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? I want to point out something about Elijah that he did that I think I want to encourage you guys about, and then I'm going to close the service up. Is that cool? You guys cool with that? I'm not landing yet. You guys got some time. Don't think I'm telling you I'm wrapping up. I don't want you, in school, remember in school, like 3 minutes before the bell, everyone starts zipping up their backpacks. Don't do that to me, all right? Hang in there. Some of y'all forgot there was backpacks in school. Some of y'all are so old. You guys were carrying stones and pieces of chalk. That's not true. Elijah was down and out. He's depressed. He's scared. This is the time that you and I would want to hear God say something to us. Something like, I'm going to protect you. Something like, I got you. Something like, I'm going to care for you. In fact, sometimes we're in those places and we look for those scriptures. God, where do you say that you love me? Because I'm really not doing good. I'd rather die today. And Elijah hears the Lord say, I'm going to show up. And Elijah's standing there and he hears a bunch of wind blowing so hard. How many of you guys ever been up to the mountains and heard the wind blowing so hard? It sounds like a ghost. You guys ever heard that before? It starts howling in the wind. Have you guys ever heard this? I encourage you, if you ever get a chance, go up to the mountains during a storm. It's crazy. You'll hear the wind. You'll be sitting outside and you hear this, ooh. It really sounds like that. It feels like, if you're spooked out a little bit, it is scary. Because as a kid, when we lived up in the mountains, I used to hear it all the time, and I could have sworn to you there was a ghost outside. It says the wind blew so hard that it was pushing rocks. I don't think it was pebbles. I believe there were stones. 50, 60-pound stones, maybe even greater. The wind was pushing so hard, it was causing his rocks to crumble everywhere. And Elijah didn't stop and say, I just had a revelation. God's so powerful that he's going to crush Jezebel. He didn't sit there in that cave and when that happened, which would have been almost terrifying to be in that cave and the Lord said, I'm going to speak to you and the wind starts blowing. He didn't take that and go, oh man, that must be the Lord trying to speak something to me. Look at the circumstance I'm in right now. I am hiding in a cave. I'm dying of starvation. I'm so exhausted. I wish I would die. I'm going to stand here. I'm waiting for the Lord. And then wind starts blowing. He didn't take that one sign and say, that must be the voice of the Lord. He didn't take it and twist it to what he wants to hear. Elijah, I'm going to save you. And you know what it says? It says Elijah knew that the Lord wasn't there in that storm. And the reason why we know this about Elijah is because Elijah wasn't listening to hear what he wanted. Elijah was desperate to hear the Lord. I want to know what you're saying. I'm desperate. So many of us are waiting to hear from the Lord that we'll stop, and at the quickest little superstitious thing that happens, we think, oh, that's the Lord. When I was a kid, I used to pray all the time. God, if you're real, we had these two flags. We were old school Christian. We had the Christian flag. Does anyone remember the Christian flag? Yeah, we had the Christian flag in our church. On one side, we had an American flag on the other side. And I used to always pray, God, if you're real, make that flag start moving. And one time it started moving. Yeah, you're laughing because you know what happened. They turned on the air conditioning, and I didn't know there was a vent behind it. I remember taking that day going, my God is real. Who knows? Maybe God was like, I got you, buddy. You know, maybe he turned on the air conditioner for all I know. But he didn't take the circumstance and say, well, that's what God's trying to tell me. Instead, he focused in. He said, I'm not here to try to figure out what I want to hear. God, I got to hear you. What are you saying to me? I got to understand. The next thing that happens is an earthquake happens. Have you guys ever been in an earthquake before? They're kind of fun. They're actually they're terrifying, but they're kind of fun. When I was a kid, we lived up in Ruth, California, and when Haley was born in 1992, a giant earthquake happened. Haley almost got taken away. Yeah, you remember, don't you? Yeah, just a little newborn baby. Earthquake happened. Everything's crumbling. Look up the 1992 earthquake in California. You're going to be blown away by this thing. I remember exactly what I was doing in 1992. I was 4 years old, but this was my first earthquake, and I never forget. I was drawing, and all of a sudden it felt like there was waves going through the house. It was cool. I know that sounds bad, but it was a rad experience, man. You're sitting in the house doing this, like, whoa. I've been through a million earthquakes there. I remember one time I was sleeping in bed, and I was in a bunk bed, and I was sleeping above my brother Pat, and the whole house started shaking real violently. And I woke up and I said, Patrick, stop shaking the bed. I'm trying to sleep. And then when the TV fell over, I realized, we're in the middle of an earthquake. Earthquakes are terrifying. They're fun, but the very ground that you're standing on is all of a sudden unsafe. And here's Elijah inside of a cave. The wind blows like crazy, and then all of a sudden, the earth starts quaking, shaking underneath him. He's standing in a cave, and I want to make this clear. We don't have any indication that he was in a cave for months. We're in a matter of minutes. He sees the wind blow, and the rocks are crumbling. He sees the earth start quaking. Surely this is the Lord trying to communicate to him. Surely the Lord's trying to communicate to him, don't you know, Elijah, that I am stronger? But he doesn't listen to find out what he wants to hear. He says, but the Lord wasn't in that circumstance either. In other words, that wasn't his voice. So then fire comes down. Bro, I'd be tripping out if I was Elijah. Could you imagine the wind's blowing, rocks are falling, the earth starts quaking, and fire? I'd be like, oh, God's coming back. This is the end. Like, I had no idea. God's really here. How many guys have ever been around a big bonfire before? Anyone been around a big bonfire? The 50th anniversary, they put a little fire out. It got so hot, and it was cold, guys. I want you guys to know, when we were at the beach this last weekend, it was so freezing cold out on the beach for one of the days. We got a fire pit out there, and this fire was burning. And I was sitting out there, and I put my legs from about me to Micah, so about this far away. But my legs felt like my hair, my skin was like on fire. It was so hot. When I was a kid, when a little kid in Ruth, we had these big bonfires. And I'm not kidding, like this middle section right here, because there would be loggers would come and drop the trees off. So about as big as this section right here, and we'd do these huge psychopath bonfires, okay? Like massive. We're probably the reason why California is burning today. It was because of those bonfires. And so we're out there, and I remember you'd have to stand 30 feet away because it would be just like the flames of hell or over in Ruth, California. You're just like, And here he is in a cave, and he's seeing fire come down. And you could just imagine how fire and heat and air works. It was pushing into the cave. He could feel the heat. It's probably a lot like the same fire that came down when he was doing the sacrifices. He saw God's evidence happen that day. You know, he's probably looking at the fire coming down going, I remember God used fire one time to speak to the nation. Maybe right now he's trying to speak to me. Maybe he's trying to tell me something. I'm going to keep you warm. Maybe he's trying to tell me something. But you know what he says? But the Lord wasn't in that either. I want to be real with you. I'm not as great as Elijah. I would have left that moment. I would have said, the Lord spoke to me on that mountain. He shook the earth. The rocks came crumbling down and fire came out. I would have walked out there and said, you know what the Lord told me? I think the Lord's trying to tell me that he's in control of everything. And he is in control of everything. But that wasn't what he was trying to say to Elijah. You know what he wanted to say to Elijah? Elijah says, then I heard a still small voice. Elijah, why are you hiding? I don't know about you, but that's not what I would want to hear. I don't think I would want to hear Elijah, why are you hiding? Because that's not my name. My name's Tom. So I would have been really confused if you said that to me. That was so dumb. You didn't have to laugh at that joke. That was a dumb joke. Look at my sister Maddie cracking up still. Thanks, Maddie. Now, if you said, Tom, why are you hiding? I would have been frustrated at him. What do you mean, why am I hiding? Jezebel's out here sending armies out trying to kill me. I'm out here starving. I feel like you abandoned me. What, you made me a little cake? That's what you got for me? I need you to tell me that you're going to vindicate me. You need to tell me that you're going to take care of me. You need to tell me that things are... This isn't what I thought you were going to tell me. Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding, you know? Elijah goes on to be told by the Lord to go back. Not to go into a different city. He says, I want you to go find another Elijah. This is actually the rest of the story. He says, gives him some prophetic words. And Elijah was called to get out of hiding. I want to make something clear. Elijah thought hiding was the best thing he could have done. I know that because that's what he did. He took off and he went and hid because he thought the circumstances were too bad. And when God spoke, God's saying, no. That's not what I want you to do. In fact, why are you hiding? Elijah is a great example of someone whose desire was to focus in, to listen, to understand what God had for him, not what he wanted from God. But it takes three things I want to just list off really quick because I don't want to be here all day. I do want to be here all day. I'm going to be here all day, hopefully, and you could join me, but I won't make you stay here all day. I want to go through these three quick things. Elijah first had to have patience to listen and understand the Lord. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about, yeah. The rest of the church needs to wake up, man. She's alive right now. That's In order to focus in and listen to understand, you have to be someone who has enough patience to wait for the Lord to speak to you. Stop going to the Lord and saying, God, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do at the last minute? Go to the Lord and say, God, I need to hear your voice. What do you want me to do? I'm not going to let circumstances tell me what I'm going to do. I'm not going to let open doors or closed doors tell me what you want me to do. I'm going to wait for your voice. I'm focusing in because I need to understand you. But you can't do it without first being patient. God, I'm going to take some time. I want to make this clear. Patience is based around time. God, I want to take some time to hear you and understand you. The next thing you have to have is humility. You know what it means to be humble? I learned this one in my marriage. I listen to understand. The only time I do that is if I have humility. If I have any part of pride inside of me, I won't listen to understand. I'll only listen to prove my point. In order to listen to the Lord, you have to have humility. God, I want to know what you want me to do. I want to know what you're trying to tell me. What is it, Father? Can I just stop for a second? How many of you guys have ever felt in your heart that the Lord wants to say something to you? You guys ever felt that before? You get this almost like twist in your stomach and a twist in your heart and you're going, God, I know you want to speak to me, but what is it? And then you get bothered all day. I want to tell you a really quick story, and this story doesn't have a great ending. It's a weird ending. Can I tell you a really quick story? There's this pastor named Francis Chan. Does anyone who know who Francis Chan is? He's like a modern-day saint. I love this dude, right? This guy gave up his church. He was in this big old church, and he just honestly, he went wild for Jesus. That's all he did. And I had just heard him one day. I went to a passion conference back in 2006, and I heard him speak, and I was blown away by this guy. I was so challenged. And one day, about 2 years later, the Atlanta Hawks were in the playoffs. I think they were playing against the Spurs. It was a 7-game series, and it was game 5. And I was at the game. But before that game happened, that morning, I woke up, and I felt the Lord tugging on my heart, start praying for Francis Chan. And I didn't take any time off that day. I woke up, I didn't read the Bible that morning. I didn't wake up and start praying that morning. I didn't spend any time. I didn't use any of my patience or any of my humility to listen to the Lord. I just kept saying, God, why? So I didn't really understand why he wanted me to pray for him. Because I'm thinking, what do I pray for a really Christian person? Like, God, make him more Christian? You know, what am I supposed to pray for him? So I got in the car and I turned on his sermon. I'm like, listen to his sermon. I was like, you want me to listen to him? He just kept saying, pray for him. Okay? And all night, all day, I'm saying all day, from the morning all the way to the night, that basketball game, I was praying for Francis Chan, kind of. I was really just arguing with God. Why do you want me to pray for him? Okay, I'll pray for him. God, will you bless him? Give him a better sermon? I don't know. What do you want me to say? And I never sat in patience and humility. I wanted to know what was in it for me. Well, that night, at the halftime, I walked out. I went to go to the restroom. You guys have been to the arena, right? I'm walking out, I walk around, and guess who I run into shoulder to shoulder? Francis Chan. I hit him on the shoulder, and I look at him and go, Francis Chan? And he looks at me and goes, yeah. And he's a little short guy, with a good smile. It's like, what are you doing here? That's all I knew what to say to him. I said, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm watching the game. I'm like, yeah. I just backed up. I said, weird, man. And I left. Isn't that a weird and dumb story, right? And to this day, I still go, Lord, what was it that you wanted me to say? Now I'm like aching, but I'm going to tell you, I never had the patience or the humility to stop and listen and understand, God, what is it that you want that day? Who knows? Maybe he wanted me to say something to him. Or maybe he was just trying to teach me a lesson. Tom, why don't you stop? Why don't you humble yourself and listen to what I have to say? At least that's what I got from it. I should email him. Like, hey, remember that one basketball game that guy was freaked out by you? And finally, and this is my last point. This is where I'm going to land. Elijah had a heart that wanted to understand. If you're going to be someone who focuses in on your listening to the Lord and saying, God, I want to listen to you so I can understand what you have to say to me, you have to want that. And that's a scary thing. I used to have this thought when I was a kid, what would happen, God, if I gave you complete control of my life? Like, what if I stepped outside of my body and you stepped in? What would I look like? What would I do? How would I act? In the time I was in junior high and high school, how would I act in my school? And I remember just imagining this being right in the face, thinking I would be so embarrassed about how you would make me act. Walk around and tell my friends, you need to repent. I couldn't imagine. Could you imagine in junior high telling someone that? Like, you need to repent. Bop. If you stop for a second and you ask that question, God, if you had complete control of my life, I had no ability to say no or do it my way, what would my life look like? It's a little scary. Because I could almost guarantee it wouldn't look the same. And the reason why we don't always fall fully in submission with the Lord is because we don't fully want that. When I talk about focusing in on the Lord to listen for understanding, you don't just have to give him time to listen. You don't just have to have humility, not to listen for your own gain, but to listen for his glory. But you have to also be someone who's willing to want something from him, more than what you think is best. You have to be able to trust him that he knows what is best for you. And if I could just nail this out, because I'm going to be honest with you, I could go like another 40 minutes on this sermon. I'm not going to. There's like so many stories in the Bible. You got Ezekiel who heard the Lord, and it was so crazy. He said, lay on your side. This is a crazy story. If you don't read your Bible, it's crazy. Start reading it. And he said, lay on your side. I want you to cook over dung. I want you to eat the dung, or not eat the dung, eat the food that you cooked over the dung so that you can be a ministry to my nation, my people. He tells another guy, Hosea, he says, I want you to marry this woman who is a prostitute. Now, I want to make this clear. A prostitute, not someone who is being forced to do this, not someone who's being trafficked. Someone who willingly went out and sold her body to many, many, many people. And he tells Hosea, that's the woman I want you to marry. Just to be clear, I think that's the only story in the Bible where someone hears the voice of the Lord saying, marry this person. So be careful, and you young people, you singles, like, God told me to marry this person. Remember, that might be a Hosea story. Hosea married that woman, and she didn't stop prostituting. Hosea had child after child after child, but would have to go out into the city streets to find his wife selling her body to other people. I don't know about you, but I don't want to hear God tell me to do those kind of things. I don't want to hear God to tell me to take my son and sacrifice him up on the mountaintop. In fact, I've told you this before, if I thought I heard God say that, I would deny it, because that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear God say something like, I'm going to give you all your dreams. I want to hear something like, I'm going to give you riches and make you famous. I want to hear that he says to me, you're never going to struggle. And what I want is not to have understanding of what he's trying to tell me. I just want to gain from it. And I know I'm not alone in this room because many of us aren't hearing from God and understanding what he's having us do because we're too caught up trying to hear what we want and not hear to understand what he's doing. Let's go even further. Today's climate, politically, socially, economically, at every level, we're not even trying to understand, God, what are you doing? I've said this before, but if you start looking at what's going on in the world, you start getting kind of excited because God's already told us this was going to happen. He's already promised these are the things to come. This is my plan. Not the enemy's plan. This is my plan. So today, if I could encourage you guys on something, I want to encourage you to ask the Lord for some patience, humility, and a desire to listen to him, to understand, and not listen to him to hear what you want. I'm going to have everyone stand to your feet because I think some of y'all falling asleep. I'm going to dim down the lights a little bit. I'm not, but I'm going to have Chris and Madison, will you dim down the lights a little bit? Because now that they're standing up, they can't fall asleep. The reason why I'm dimming the lights is because I'm going to say a prayer with you. And I don't want you to feel like you're standing next to the person you're standing next to. That's why we have the lights dimmed. See, I want you to look next to the people around you. Look at them, look at them. Look at who's sitting next to you. They're here with you right now. But they're not in your heart right now. There's a alone space that you have. I'm going to have everyone in here close your eyes for a second. Everyone in here close your eyes. Everybody, don't worry. No one's going to rob you. You might be in the presence of a church people. But this moment right here, I want you to stop for a second. And I just want you to recognize God. I just want it to be you and him for a second. You might be sitting next to him. And for some of y'all, this might be the first time this week that you've taken a moment of patience. Taking a moment of time. Say, God, I'm ready to hear you today. Taking a moment of time to say, okay, I'm ready to listen. I'm going to have some patience. Can we just sit here for a second? God, I'm going to just listen just for a minute. I just got to hear you for a second. Oh, some of you guys got so much cloudy thoughts coming in. He's like, just wait. Some of you guys got thoughts. It's like wind blowing. It's like fire. It's like earthquakes. You can't get your eyes off of the Lord saying, let those things pass. I want to speak to you. Some of you guys have been complaining to the Lord going, why am I this way? Why is this happening this way? Some of you guys have been so caught up in your circumstances. And this is your first time stopping. Say, oh Lord, what do you have to say? I've just been trying to figure out what I want, but what do you want to say? Some of you in here right now are standing here and you're going, this kind of feels foolish. And there's not any humility for you to even hear if the Lord was speaking to you right now. The Lord's saying, I just want to speak to you. Just focus in. You're sitting there, I got things to do. I got things to think about. I got places to go. This is just a church service. I got life after this. The Lord's saying, but you're not sitting with me outside. Just take the moment. I have something to say to you. There's someone in here who's going, I don't know if I want to hear what he has to say. It's going to cost me everything if he says something to me. I know if I heard God right now, it would ruin my life. If I heard God right now, I'm afraid of what he's going to ask of me. There's been people in here who haven't wanted to hear from the Lord because he's going to say something to you and you already know it. It's going to make you have to change what you're already doing. Some of you guys started making life paths without listening to him. Some of you guys started making decisions without listening to him. Some of you guys started making crazy opportunities in your life without even listening to him. And if you listen to him, he might tell you something you don't want to hear, and you're not willing to receive it today. For the next 1 minute, I'm going to stop talking. I want us just to focus in and say, God, I'm here now to listen and understand.
We hope that you enjoyed today's sermon. Once again, if you'd like to support this ministry, log on to www.dreamcenterchurch.com to help us advance the kingdom of God. And check us out on the Church Center app and all your favorite social media platforms. Until next time, be blessed and go do the great things God has called you to do.